It does take a minute for the stream to prepare. It's not instant. It just takes a minute.
Todavía no.
Okay, we're live.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos, nuestro pueblo latino. Good evening and welcome to everyone who is joining the Latino Leaders Enhancing Advocacy and Development, LEAD 2020 Virtual Statewide Conference featuring Representative Joaquin Castro, Chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, as the keynote speaker. I am Lupe Ramos Montini from Michigan, and I serve on the State Board of Education. Joaquin Castro represents Texas' 20th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. Serving his fourth term, Representative Castro sits on the House Intelligence and Education and Labor Committees, serves as Vice Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, as Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations, and Chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Representative Castro is also the Chair of the Texas Democratic Caucus and founded the Congressional Pre-K Caucus, the U.S. Japan Caucus, and the Congressional Caucus for ASEAN. Before Congress, Representative Castro graduated from Stanford University and Harvard Law School and served 5 terms in the Texas legislature. Representative Castro is no stranger to Michigan. He has joined us at the Michigan State Capitol in Lansing for Advocacy Day and marched down Cesar Chavez Commemorative Boulevard in Grand Rapids, Michigan to honor the life and legacy of Cesar Estrada Chavez. Help me welcome Representative Castro as he delivers words of commitment and determination as the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Representative Castro.
Well, thank you, Lupe. It's great to be with you, with LEAD, and back with the Latino community in Michigan, if only by Zoom this time. But I have very fond memories of being in Grand Rapids and in Lansing with my brother to celebrate Hispanic heritage, and also Cesar Chavez Day in March, I think, of 2006, I want to say. And as you mentioned, I'm very proud to represent the wonderful city of San Antonio in the U.S. House of Representatives, and also to be chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus this term. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus has 39 members representing districts from across the country, and we continue to grow in our ranks in Congress, just as the Latino community continues to grow across the country. Traditionally, we'd often thought of Latino community being in big cities and states in Texas and California and Florida and New York and cities like Chicago. But as you all know, there have been thriving Latino communities in states like Michigan and in Iowa and in Minnesota and in so many other places. And those communities are just getting stronger and stronger, and often electing either their first school board member, first state representative, first city council member, or perhaps their second and third as the years go by. And so that's been wonderful to see. As you can imagine, much of our work in the last several months has been our response to this pandemic that has devastated the Latino community, both in terms of the health devastation, because approximately 36,500 Latinos and Latinas have passed away, have died from COVID-19, including my stepmom, who was 78 years old when she died in July of this year. And also the community has been economically devastated. For years, we were coming back after the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. In fact, for a few of those years, Latinas were the group in America that was creating the most new small businesses of any of the different groups in this country. And of course, a lot of that has taken a severe hit because of COVID-19 and because of the economic setback. So much of our work in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is dedicated right now to getting the Latino community and also getting this country back on its feet. But this month is a month of celebration where we think about the significant contributions of Latinos, not just in fields like politics, but also in fields like media, in the sciences and engineering and arts and culture, in every aspect of American society. And this celebration is especially important because it's important that the young people in our own community understand the contributions that Latinos have made to the development of this nation, and that also Americans outside of the Latino community understand the significant contributions that Latinos have made to our nation. And I want to tell you why I believe that's especially important in this day and age. As chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, one of the big initiatives that I've taken on over the past 2 years has been diversity in the media and making sure that Latinos are well represented and accurately portrayed by American media. Because there has been this dangerous nexus over the last few years between the political rhetoric of some politicians who will say that immigrants, for example, are rapists and criminals, and then the stereotypes that people will often see about Latinos and Latinas when they go to a movie or they turn on their television screen or they stream something from one of the services, what they pick up from the media. And so because American media is still the predominant way that groups in this country, their image is defined and the narrative about them is created, I believe that it's been important that we challenge the American media to have better representation of Latinos and also to more accurately portray the Latino community. And I want to give you just a snippet of what we uncovered in this work. We were having a meeting with the Association of American Publishers because we were advocating for more Latino and Latina stories to be told in books and to be published, and also for more Latinos to be included in the publishing industry. And we were on a call that included some CEOs of the top 5 publishing companies in the country and some of the biggest in the world. And I asked one CEO, who was the CEO of one of these companies, whether he could name 3 Latinos or Latinas who had made significant contributions to American history. And this gentleman was a very accomplished man. He had gone to Stanford, my alma mater, and also an Ivy League school, and was now was the CEO of a Fortune 500 company that publishes textbooks for schools, nonfiction, fiction, all of it. And as I asked him this question, he took 5 or 10 seconds to think about it. And finally, he came back and he said, I can't. He told me that he couldn't name 3 Latinos or Latinas who had made significant contributions in American history. And while I was frustrated with that answer, in many ways, I wasn't mad at him because I understand it. Our histories, whether it's Mexican Americans, Cuban Americans, Dominican Americans, Puerto Ricans, whichever Latino group you choose, have often been left out of the textbooks that teach American history and even our state histories. And it's important that in the coming years, we all resolve to do a better job of including those histories in our textbooks, in secondary education, in higher education, but also in American media, because it affects the way we see ourselves, and it also affects the way the rest of the country sees us. I am convinced now, after doing this work, that we have a long way to go in having the country understand who we are, what we stand for, what we represent, and the contributions that we have made in different fields to the development and the success and the prosperity of America, whether it's in the sciences, in business, in academia, in the arts, in culture, in theater, whatever it may be, we have to get those stories out. And I want you to know that we have been working on that for a few years now, very intently at the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. I am hopeful that in the coming years, the coming months and the coming years, our community will do what it's always done, be resilient and bounce back from this tragedy. And I wish all of you in Michigan the very best as we all make our way on that path. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Castro. You touched on very important issues that do face us every day. Now, in the year 2012, on the State Board of Education, I helped, together with the other board members, to pass a resolution so we would include the Cesar y Chavez, Martin Luther King, and many other figures such as those important men in the social studies standards. So we as Hispanics have to continue advocating and working towards being part of the American history. So that's very, very well key. Right now, I am meeting here with El Vocero newspaper and TV, and he is one of the newspapers here in our area. And so it is hard. It's a hard business to be in, but it is a business that we have to intentionally and actively and determined to be in, so people will know who we are and how we're contributing to our communities and to the economy of all of these communities. So a great topic to be touched. Now, I have an array of questions that the community put together. And the first one goes like this. Where does the fight in Congress over DACA stand? What do you see as the livelihood the DREAM Act will become law in the near future?
Well, the House of Representatives, which is controlled by Democrats, passed the Dream and Promise Act, which was HR 6, over a year and a half ago now. And unfortunately, that piece of legislation that passed in the House has been stalled in the Senate since then. But I'm hopeful, and I believe that if we get a new president and hopefully a new Senate in the next term, starting in January, then our chances of passing the Dream and Promise Act and putting our dreamers on a path to citizenship, our chances are extremely good. And I believe that we can achieve that. But we also have to go beyond that to protect many of their parents. If you remember a few years ago, President Obama had proposed not only DACA, but was known as DAPA, which was the parents of dreamers, and protecting them. We have to pursue comprehensive immigration reform so that we protect our DACA, our dreamers, of course, our DACA recipients, but also their parents.
Okay, well, thank you for that answer. I know the DACA students that we represent and that we work with are eager and are happy that there is some movement in their behalf. The next question, where is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus doing, or what is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus doing to protect farm workers, meat packers, and other vulnerable essential workers during the pandemic?
Oh, that's a great question. We have spent a lot of time working on labor standards and through the legislation that we have passed in Congress, targeting industries like the farm worker industry or the agricultural industry to make sure that farm workers have the protective gear that they need and the resources available to them to get tested and get treated if they are infected by the coronavirus. And also with meatpacking, we have pushed OSHA to create mandatory standards of safety at meatpacking plants. One of the things that we did in the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, because as y'all know, over the last several months, when COVID-19 first started, one of the first places where you had big outbreaks was at meatpacking plants. And the workforce there is heavily Latino at many of the meatpacking plants. So right away, we set up meetings with the CEOs of the 3 major meatpacking plant owners, JBS and Tyson among them. And we press them very hard also about protecting their workforce. and we've stayed on top of them. And we're also looking at legislative ways that we can further make sure that there's a clear standard of safety so that folks are protected.
Thank you. Okay, now the next question is similar to but different people. What steps is Congress taking to protect immigrants in U.S. government custody during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I'll be honest with you, the answer is not enough. I don't think the government is doing enough. I have pressed and others have pressed the executive branch for people in ICE detention, for example, to be released to their family sponsors unless DHS can show that a particular person poses a national security or immediate public safety threat. Otherwise, I think they have endangered the lives of people by keeping them in detention. And then we've also seen that because many of these detention centers have gone without oversight visits by members of Congress during this pandemic, you see awful things happening, like at the Irwin County Detention Center, where a doctor performed hysterectomies on at least a few women without their consent and without their knowledge. And so we have to do, I think the government has to do more. It has to live up to a better standard than what it's doing now.
Okay, the next question. We are in the midst of a reckoning with race as a nation. In Michigan, this is largely seen as a Black and white issue. But how do Latinos fit in the story? Where should Latinos stand at a time like this?
Well, that's a great question. And look, there's no doubt, if you look at the numbers in different communities, that the African-American community has borne the brunt of police brutality throughout the country. But not too far behind in many communities is the Latino community, who've also experienced the ravages of police brutality. When the Congress, or the House of Representatives at least, passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act a few months ago, I told the story of a Mexican immigrant in San Antonio who was shot to death by a police officer. And that same officer, several years before, had killed an African-American man in San Antonio. So this is a concern that both communities share, systemic brutality that both communities have been affected by. And I believe that we have to continue to work for change in our policing system. And that means change on the federal level, on the state level, and then even on the local level in terms of collective bargaining agreements that have very light accountability provisions for officers.
Okay, now, so how do Latinos fit in the story?
Well, Latinos, they fit in as allies to the African-American community, but also over the years as people who have also been victims of police brutality. And so let's take the example in Los Angeles of Andres Guardado, who was killed by Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies. You see those stories with Latinos in different states and cities across the country. And as I'm sure y'all have confronted in Michigan, and we certainly have in Texas. So for the Latino community, this issue of reforming our policing system is an incredibly important one.
Thank you. Now, we are here in Michigan, and this is our question. Very often, Hispanic organizations have the tendency of working in silos. How can an organization such as LEAD Michigan coordinate its efforts with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus to support the work being done at a national and local level?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that, because the Congressional Hispanic Caucus is looking to work with organizations in the different states. And so our door is always open to partnership on different kinds of either social justice issues, education, healthcare, all of these things that are part of the infrastructure of opportunity in this country. We look forward to partnering with you and seeing how we can work together.
We would love to see that. We would love to see that. Okay, well, I think we don't have time for other questions, but if you would like to make some closing remarks, that would be remarkable.
Sure. Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, congratulations to everyone at LEAD on all of the amazing work that y'all are doing to help improve the lives of Latinos in Michigan, and all of the great work that I know that you're going to do in the coming years. And I hope that at some point when this pandemic is over, that I'll have a chance to go back and visit what I remember was a very beautiful state in Michigan and lots of wonderful cities. And I was there last year when my brother was running for president, and was one of the debates was in Detroit in the Democratic primary. And it was wonderful to be back in Michigan. And I look forward to getting back there again.
Okay, well, you know, Michigan is very, very proud of the Castro brothers. And so you keep working together. We will make a difference in this country. So we thank you. We thank you so much for taking the time to come and participate in our 2020 virtual statewide conference. Now, our charge to all the audience that are listening to us is that we spread the message that we heard today. We have to go vote. We have to encourage others to go vote, because together, only together, every single vote will fuel our democracy and light the future of America, because we are a part of this America. So we thank everyone for participating. Again, we thank Congressman Castro, and this is Joaquin, guys.
Joaquin.
Joaquin
Well, Leon doesn't have a beard. That's how you can tell.
Joaquin has the beard. All right, so we thank you. We thank you so much. And again, we are very, very proud of you and your brother.
Thank you, Lupe. And I want to say one last thing. You know, I remember when we spoke in Michigan some years back that I met so many people living in Michigan who had had Texas roots at one point or another. People that had grown up in Texas and then made their way to Michigan, or had followed the farm working trails, for example, and were in Michigan. And I just wanted to say that as a Texan, y'all are always welcome back if you ever want to come back to Texas. But we're glad that you're doing well in a beautiful state like Michigan.
Yes, we're all Michiganders, pero de Texas.
Yeah.
But of Texas. Okay, well, that concludes our 2020 virtual LEAD statewide conference. And in behalf of LEAD and its president and all of its executive committee and all of its members, all of its affiliates, we say thank you. Muchas, muchas gracias. Have a good night.